Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a fantastic guest. This is a woman that I greatly admire. She's one of the most talented and successful people in town, and she's also one of the most likable. I saw Casey Perrin Robert grow up because she was classmates and dear friends with my younger brother, Louie, and these guys started doing great things at a very young age, from scholarships that help kids go to college and community service oriented things like that, to opening her own businesses, multiple businesses. She is an award-winning interior decorator. Her business downtown Ponchatoula is just truly beautiful. It's a wonderful place. They do it all, from selling retail items to framing things, these beautiful things you can put on your wall like those behind me. I can't say enough good things about Casey. So with no further ado, Casey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Parker.
Thank you for being here. I know you're a busy mom in between running businesses, hitting the road, raising kids. And I know your time is very valuable. So thank you for sharing it with us.
You're very welcome.
Why don't we kick things off?
To cover all my exhaustion,
Why don't we kick things off with you just telling our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Okay. I'm a lifelong Ponchatoula resident, born and raised here in the area, and except for a brief stint at LSU, where I got my degree from, I've been here pretty much all my life, and my husband and I are raising our family here as well. We live right here in downtown, just kind of across the highway from your office here, and my business is downtown as well. That's something that
like me, you have a short commute.
Yes, exactly.
I give my wife a hard time about my 6-block commute, and
listen, that's something to be proud of, because sometimes when you're running late, all you need are those 2 or 3 minutes to get where you're going, and it really helps.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned your husband Garrick. The two of you grew up here. Before we get into, because I'm going to ask you all the good details about your love story and how you met and all these beautiful kiddos you're raising. But why don't we go back before that? Tell us a little bit about your childhood, your parents, your family, what it was like growing up here in Ponchatoula.
So I grew up, actually, I live downtown now, but I actually grew up kind of on the eastern side of town, outside the city limits, a little bit more rural, especially back then, before we had as much development as we have here today. Really, we're only about 6-7 minutes outside of town, but it really felt like a lot longer back then. And I grew up on the farmland that my mother grew up on. We were raised on family land out there with my 2 brothers and myself, and then we had our cousins all just on the same gravel road right next door to us. So instead of neighbors, we just had family relatives, and as much freedom.
What road was that? Let's talk about what specific road.
That family land is at the end of Estherbrook Road. It's called Stevens Lane. My mother was a Stevens, and that's all her.
Great family.
Her family land, yeah. So my grandparents' house was kind of at the front of that land. My papa, who's deceased now, he would be he was born in 1918, so he would have been 103 in July, So
oh wow.
That's the land he was literally born on, and the house where he was born is still there on that land. It's not inhabitable anymore, but it's special to us.
Right.
So it is still there, and
that's so cool.
Yeah, that's
because
spot,
I just love the history of the Ponchatoula, especially the farming communities.
Yeah.
My best friends, as you know, are the Richardson boys, Will and Ben, and our kids are friends, and they're the godfathers of my children. And their grandfather was an East Ponchatoula farmer like yours, Hollis Poche.
Yeah.
And we just spent this past weekend having a party out there on his old farm. And it just means so much to me. 40 years ago, I was in that pumpkin patch. Now my kids are there. But generations have done it long before we came along. So it's cool that your family's been able to do that too.
If on a clear day in the winter, when the trees are not grown through and you can kind of see through, you can actually see from our family lane to Mr. Hollis's farm.
Oh, small world.
As the crow flies, the roads don't connect, but as the crow flies, it's just, they're neighboring woods back there. So
yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, what was life like that as a country girl? Because like you say, 6 minutes, not far, but it really was true country out there.
So it really was.
Talking about was farming.
We're going back some years, Parker. So there was.
I know you're only 22 years old, but 22 years ago was a long,
But there was no satellite TV, and we did not have cable back there. So really, it was very. So dare I say the word boring to grow up in the country, but the boredom leads to, as we know as adults, okay, the boredom leads to creativity and how you spend your time, and having to go explore outside, walk in the woods, all kind of stuff was grown out there all the time. Still is, everybody still has their garden, but that kind of thing is what I spent time doing growing up, because what was there to do inside? Not much, really.
Yeah. No, I think back to that time in my life, and it's like peach wars, right? The rotten peaches that fall from the peach orchard. Of course, little boys and girls go to war, throwing those at one another.
Right. I mean, we really did. When my grandparents were alive, some of my favorite memories from when I was a kid, and I mean, 5 years old, 6 years old, maybe till I was as old as 10 or 12. We spent the summers outside. They were raising bell peppers at that time. They had long since gotten rid of their livestock, and just were kind of farming the land. And I remember doing that. We'd get up early in the morning because it would be hot by lunchtime, and go and the adults would stand and pack the peppers into boxes and bring them into Ponchatoula Feed and Seed, where they would sell them. I mean, it was a very simple kind of economy, and I'm not saying it was like that throughout the world in the late 80s, but that's all I knew, as a kid. And and we were happy as clams, Parker. We were not, nobody wanted anything else than what we had. We were all just happy together. And I have to say, I don't remember memories of the heat. Nowadays it seems like it's so stifling, and I don't know if I didn't experience it as much as a kid. Maybe children are more immune to it, resistant to it, but as far as I remember, it was a perfect 80 degrees all the time when we were little.
Well, if that was the case, those days are long gone.
They are long past.
Although today was nice, we all know reality here in Ponchatoula is a hot, sweaty year, probably 300 days a year. Well, tell me about the people, because your family's so beloved. I can't wait to get into the stories of your late mother. Your dad's still a local icon. But let's start with the grandparents, because as you mentioned, you're living on family property with grandparents right there. Tell us a little bit about your grandparents and the people they were.
My grandmother and grandfather that I'm talking about, my
the Stevens family, right?
Yeah, Paul and Violet Stevens. So my mama and papa is what we called them, and they were farmers all their lives. My papa went to school through the 8th grade, and that was it. And but I would never have,
which was very common back then.
I would never ever have thought of him as an uneducated man. He knew as much about growing anything in the earth and raising any kind of animal, and he and my grandmother both, I should credit her with this too, absolutely adored their family, and just knew how to love on people. And to this day, in fact, someone I ran into that had been a classmate of my mom, they said, I remember how much I loved visiting your grandparents. I would go sit in their kitchen, and they would fix us all coffee, even though we were only 14 years old, and we'd sit and drink black coffee. And I loved visiting with them. And Parker, that you could not have said anything to touch me more, right then than saying how truly loved they felt in the presence of my grandparents, because I do believe that's the best impression we can leave on this world is
amen.
Loving and therefore forming the people who are around us and entrusted to us. And they did an excellent job with all of their 5 children. That's
such a great point. We're stewards of this community. We're going to pass through in what, seems like a very short time. And we owe the great community we have to folks like your grandparents who formed it before us.
Yes.
And that's really neat that you would share that.
We absolutely do. We absolutely do. Like I said, there was a kind of a simple economy here in Ponchatoula years ago. And so many people think of our area as sort of booming since maybe Hurricane Katrina 16 years ago or something like that, the kind of the recent development. And that's all true. That's absolutely, we don't want to discount the people who now call our community home. But the fact is our community existed as an independent community for years and years with not really depending on city life or any sort of outside influence. You know, we kind of had our own people here who were happy here, choosing to be here. And, you know, I remain very proud of that, you know.
Right. You're right. That growth, that boom, as you described it, is a very recent development. This area, you know, really, like you said, Katrina was like an explosion. Growth took off. We're seeing, you know, another element to that now. It's really becoming perhaps exponential, but fairly late forming. I mean, this really was a small little farming community,
you know,
not that long ago.
Like I said, for me to have grown up sort of outside of town, right now you would not necessarily be able to distinguish what's in town and what's not if you drive that way. You know, there's really not the expansive fields and kind of rural feel to that as you go out that way that there once was. Not anymore.
Well, let's talk about the next generation of your family, your mom, your dad. What was it like growing up in their house?
My mom was a wonderful stay-at-home mom, and my dad, the sole provider of our house. I guess he slept there some nights. He was mostly working all the time. You know, just a truly traditional family unit.
Doing a lot of building. That's why when you drive through this community, you see so many things Ronnie Perrin did. He was out hustling, right?
And as you know, my dad is a third generation building contractor. He's done that all his life, and at least as long as I've been alive. And my brother Hunter is now taken over that established family business, which I'm very proud of. He's wonderful.
Oh, Hunter's such a great guy, and they do such great work. You know, we were chatting off camera about the demand for their services, and you know, they do quality work, so they're not going to just, you know, turn them over overnight, roughshod.
No. For better or for worse, they will overbuild it, and it will stand through whatever else the Gulf of Mexico has to throw at us. So, which, you know, here's hoping it's not much more, but
right. Well, were your mom and dad strict? What was it like growing up with two brothers? You know, what's the
my mom and dad?
I
don't think my mom and dad were strict at all. However, they raised three kids who wanted nothing more than to please mom and dad, you know, and to make them happy. And so we didn't push the envelope too much because, like I said, we were out kind of in the middle of the nowhere. We didn't know there was an envelope to be pushed, dare I say. And of course, going to Catholic school, you know, our world was pretty small back then. You know, we did not have that outside influence that kids have now. Not at all.
St. Joseph comes up a fair amount here, you know, for guests that either went there like us or have kids that are going there now like we do. And tell us what your St. Joe experience was like, Catholic school.
St. Joseph for me was kindergarten to 8th grade, and we were one of the larger classes, mine and your brother's Louis' class, of 30 kids from start to finish. And most of those classes had maybe 26, 27 kids in them.
Yeah, that sounds right. I was 6 years ahead of you guys, and I think we graduated 24. So you're right. 30 would have been big.
We were kind of bigger. They would always have to say, can you fit the desk
folks,
in
for
this
reference,
room?
I've got a kindergartner there now, and they have two classes of 28. So
which is two pretty big classes for kindergarten. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so back in those days, it was just one class for each grade. And, you know, I remember like the old convent building was still standing at that time. And, you know, that school facility still is old, but in a sweet and wonderful way, not in a dilapidated way. You know, it's just.
Now, were there any nuns there when you arrived, or had they?
When I started. Now, maybe when I was at the very, very beginning, but not. Not.
Well, you would have just missed them. I can't remember what grade they left in. For me, it was probably lower grades, so probably before you arrived.
It was all just, you know, lay staff at that time.
Yeah.
You know? But definitely going to Catholic school, I still am in the Catholic faith. That definitely was a formative thing for me. And you know, we chose Catholic education for our kids as well, up to the shutdown of March 2020, and so that's definitely a big part of our lives for sure.
Yeah. Well, do you stay in touch with your old classmates or these lifelong friends? Or
as much as I can. You know, several of us still live here, and then there's a few off in different areas of the country. But all these modern tools like Facebook that we have these days that let us stay in touch really are a joy to me. I love seeing my friends, people that I knew as a young person, raising their own families. That's a major joy for me. I think that's absolutely wonderful to see how everyone has moved into becoming a parent rather than, being parented, I guess. And
sure.
And really, I have to say, the group that we were with, even into Ponchatoula High School, I think one of the things that Ponchatoula has always been known for is the quality of our people, and and the big hearts that we have here, and the amount of sort of tight community bond that we really do have here is just noticeable to people from other places. How we all kind of know each other, or even if we don't know each other,
right?
We kind of know who we are and where we're, who we belong to, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's something that.
Do you have a theory on where that bond comes from? I mean, what that kind of, because you're right, there's a special connection here in Ponchatoula, but I can't really pinpoint, its source. Do you have an idea about that?
I don't know why. I don't know if it's because we're sort of an older community. We're not necessarily what I call a strip mall community. We're not just a new sort of interstate development type of community.
Yeah, I believe Ponchatoula is the oldest city in the parish, right?
We're the oldest in the parish,
right.
Absolutely. Okay. And I think we have a lot of older families who still are rooted here.
Yeah. And, speaking of older families, let me ask you about the Perrin family, because I'm old enough, you see the gray in the beard, to remember the days of the phone book. And I can tell you, when you got to Ponchatoula, the phone book, and you got to P, that Perrin list was the longest in town.
There's a lot of them.
I mean, it must have been so hard as you get to high school to find a date that you're not cousins with. I mean, you had to find Garrick, who's, his mom's from China, so that helps you.
It is actually true. That's always been kind of a joke of Garrick and I, is that I had to go international to find somebody we were related to in the area, But yeah,
what's it like growing up with such a large family? Because I think of my life, and heck, 3 of my best friends are parents, and they're not like first cousins. They're
not. They might be related down the road
to all these different sects.
Yeah, there's sort of the family history is that there were 2 brothers that came over from Europe, and one was in our area, and one was sort of Madisonville, Mandeville area. Okay. And then from those 2 people have come all these last names, and I guess they just have had a lot of male heirs that carried on the last name in the area, and so at St. Joseph we were the only Perrins, but I had a lot of my Stevens side cousins there.
Sure, yeah.
Once I got into Ponchatoula High School, I realized how many. Oh, that's a Perrin. Wait, who is my parent? Is that
Right. And so like Jacob, I assumes your cousin, and he was what, a year or 2 ahead of you.
Yeah.
But you're right. There were still a lot of parents. I had 2 in my class of 24. So your year may have been.
And the Hill family is a big family. At least I had a lot of kids kind of my age, and that's a relation on the parent side to me as well. So there's
the Stevens Hill connection there. Of course, Mr. Milton Hill. You now, I guess, a relative of yours by marriage. Yes. Mr. Milton and my parents are. They're old buddies, And speaking of the coffee, when you mentioned drinking coffee at your grandparents' house, I have so many memories of him coming over and drinking coffee at my mom and dad's house. And great families, all the ones you mentioned. Yeah,
and everybody laughing together, I'm sure, because that's quite a character. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. He always called me son because I was the short one, and of course he's a diminutive fella. And the family joke was that he was my real dad. Yeah. So he'd come in sometimes in the summer if I was, lazy or laying about. He'd whack me on the feet and say, "Get up, son! You coming to work with me today?"
Absolutely.
But all great people. That's really neat. Well, folks, we're here with Casey Perrin Robert. We've been talking about her wonderful childhood here in Ponchatoula on the east side of town, growing up in farm country with brothers and big families and going to St. Joseph, all the great Catholic school stuff. Why don't we jump forward to that chapter of life that is the great common denominator of Ponchatoula in Ponchatoula High School?
Okay.
Because while at the 8th grade level, you might be at the junior high, at St. Joseph, at Champ Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
Come high school, we all go into one spot with a few
That's right.
exceptions that peel off to Hammond. So tell us about your high school experience, about PHS, and about specifically the people that you recall from that era fondly. They could be other students, teachers, coaches, you name it. But what was PHS like for you?
I have wonderful memories of Ponchatoula High School. I always have said that I think my education there at a public high school was absolutely on par with any education that I would have gotten at a private school, and I'm thrilled to have had my days there. That is east of town, so kind of back in my neighborhood where I sort of grew up, so that was close to home. Whereas the private high school, had I chosen, that would have been like about 40 minutes away in the north end of Hammond. So that just really was not something that would have been realistic for us just every morning. And so PHS it was, and going from the same group of 30 kids into a sea of people from all over, really, like you said, from Ponchatoula Junior High School and Champ Cooper and just kind of the surrounding areas. So we really do, everybody kind of comes together there. And, and at that time, Parker, this was before the high school students had to wear uniforms. There were no regular uniforms in the parish public schools. And so,
when you began,
it was like a riot of color going into that first day.
Right. But as I recall, they changed that rule while you were in high school.
Year.
Am I right?
Okay. Yeah. It was our senior year. We had to start wearing uniforms, and that'll make your morning go faster, when you go back to not having.
And the reason I remember, you may be able to shed light on this and help educate me, but I remember the moment I knew my brother Louis would be an attorney was his senior year of high school when this dress code was implemented. You're laughing. You know what I'm talking about? You want to tell our viewers a little bit about what you remember?
You can.
Okay, I'll do it. So you don't get in trouble. I will. Louis' first big case, folks. And let me tell you now, if you don't know my youngest brother, Louis, he's a truly world-class lawyer. He's a partner.
He's a brilliant person. Absolutely.
Brilliant guy. He's a partner with the largest law firm in the South, Baker Botts in Houston, Texas. Yes. Great lawyer. But it got started with high school dress code because, he did not agree with it. Right. Yeah. It was the definition of khaki, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
And as I recall, he took that case all the way to the school board and ended up getting to wear the khakis he wanted to wear. Or that's the version he told me. I was off at college by then.
I can't remember if his khakis were too light or too.
I think they were
dark. I think it was like too light, and somebody told him he was wearing white pants, and he said, "No way, Jose. We're going to define this with the type of fabric and with the color and all, the way it's constructed." And, he nailed it down.
I think I fibbed a little bit. That might have been Louis' second big case. The first one might have related to my mom and the gardenettes and the garden club, but I can't tell that story without really getting in trouble. But yeah, he was a character. He's come a long ways. But the two of you and Louis, along with a group of your core friends, did something truly remarkable that always impressed me. You formed a scholarship committee, and y'all busted your butts at the Strawberry Festival year after year to raise money for scholarships to honor a great friend of yours. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that project? Because that was really
that's another longtime Ponchatoula family, the Pelche family, who 2 generations back, Mr. Blue was fire chief here in town.
Right.
I was getting that right, that he was fire chief and not just a member of the.
And with Captain Jeremy Pelche, they're still going strong there at the firehouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
So many great firemen in that family.
And just a wonderful longtime family, very well respected, salt of the earth people, and a good buddy of ours, our friend Kyle Blue Pelche, from high school, passed away when we were 21 from a very aggressive, very unusual form of cancer that he kind of just popped up with one day, and then a few months later was gone from this earth. And always had the absolute best attitude and approach to life, always positive, always smiling, a true.
So many members of that family do, yeah.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, dad, siblings, mom, that Pelche family, they're all great.
They know that they are loved by the Lord, and they don't need much else in life, and they count many things as blessings, as we all should. And so, when Kyle passed away, it was really devastating. For us at 21 years old, most people at that age have not gone through tremendous loss,
Right.
And so for our class, we were all very sad to lose such a shining light. And Louis was the one who said, I think we need to do something to kind of keep that spirit alive in our community, because he was such a force for good in this world. And so I said, all right, I'm your right hand man, let's do this. We're going to rock and roll. And so the two of us just kind of figured it out as we went along. Certainly I had not done anything like that before. And we had tremendous amount of support, and we spent about 10 years doing that fundraising at the Strawberry Festival. The Strawberry Festival.
And to clarify, you guys were making smoothies, right? You had a
we
booth
were making strawberry smoothies. We were kind of
before we get into
grandfathered
the full
a spot. Mm-hmm.
No, please go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
We kind of were kind of handed that recipe in that spot in the festival. And for those who don't know, the Strawberry Festival grounds are nonprofit organizations only. And so when you visit the Strawberry Festival, you come into town and you see all these kind of carnival people with big banners, and then you kind of go a little bit further in and you start seeing homemade poster board, and that's where you want to be. Yeah. Because that's number one, where the best stuff is, because these community people are cooking the best food. But those are all nonprofit organizations throughout the grounds who really depend on that as their main fundraiser for the year. So not just us, but dozens and dozens.
Sure. My Rotary Club, the Kiwanis, basically you name it, the PTAs. Yeah, that's the big fundraiser for everybody.
So many great people can be found, behind a booth wall on Strawberry Festival weekend. And so we spent a good many years ordering cases and cases and cases of strawberries.
Right.
And
I love to see you guys outgrow
our recipe. It was delicious.
The recipe was phenomenal. The smoothies were delicious, but it was funny because in year one, you guys clearly just went and borrowed, perhaps without permission, the blenders of each family home.
It was you took your like a wing and a prayer. Yeah.
Right. And then you burn those out, making a million smoothies.
We did.
And then eventually you guys could afford real equipment and upgrade the operation.
After a year or two, my dad came up with this signature Ronnie concoction of some PVC pipe, and he made a wooden handle.
Right.
And so Garrick and the blending team were just constantly at the tables behind us, just constantly making some strawberry banana and some strawberry only. Okay, so you can have your choice of the two, and putting them into these kind of dispensers that we made, because a regular, drink fountain wouldn't do it, because we had real fruit in this thing, So we had to have something that let us keep going, because that's how busy the festival gets. We have 200,000 to 400,000 people every strawberry festival we get in town, and so we really. It's not like kind of a cartoon, like, oh, we're busy, here you go, 3 in a row. It really was, we would be maxed out. And so it was quite a process, and it's a good thing we did that when we were very young.
Well, it was neat to see you guys essentially donate the strawberry festivals of your 20s to such a good cause. Because I got to tell you, I went to the Strawberry Festival every year in my 20s. And I had a blast. It was a far more selfish experience. I was, having fun and partying and all that. Eventually, I found the Rotary, did a little bit of good work.
Yes,
it wasn't as hard a work as you guys did.
It's redeeming.
And it led to me meeting my wife there at
That's right.
So it's a great thing. But speaking of Strawberry Festival and love, you mentioned the guy helping your dad with this invention, this ingenious little invention, Garrick Robert, your husband. World-class guy, such a neat guy. I remember him all the way back to Little Conference football. He's, such a great dad, a great man, a great businessman. Tell us about how you guys met, got together, etc., because he's such a cool guy. I'd love to hear a little more about his story and your love story together.
Well, Garrick and I met when I was in college, and I was a waitress at his mom's restaurant, probably your favorite place to eat.
Amen. China Lotus. And the Lotus is just what we call it in my family, but yeah.
Absolutely. And we, met there, but certainly didn't begin dating right away or anything. Garrick is 7.5 years older than me.
Sisters, right? Is that how you got
and so I'm the same age as Jelena, one of his younger sisters. He's the oldest of 5 children in the family. And and they have a wonderful family. They all are 5 siblings, very close, and I'm very proud to be a member of their family. And my mother-in-law, as you know, is a wonderful businesswoman. And
Miss Juliana's the best.
And
I will forever be
fantastic
indebted to
person.
her. She was one of my first clients. So, Miss Juliana, if you're watching this, I want to say thank you. All those years ago, you put your faith in me. You were already a big shot businesswoman, and I was a young stumbling lawyer, and I'll always appreciate that. So thank you.
Well,
sorry, Casey, to jump in on your story.
Yes,
but I just love her to death.
And so, as do I. And Parker, I will say, I consider myself a confident business person, but I have no plans to move halfway across the world and start a new business. And that's what she's done, and been very successful.
She's a tour de force, and she's been so successful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I'm thrilled that my children have that influence in their lives. That we have the kind of background of our town in Ponchatoula and our roots here, but also they have wonderful experience and kind of exposure to international things through her, through that side of the family. And so, Garrick spent some time in law school, but ultimately ended up in the business world. And so, and he has done a few different things in the business world, but he really does franchise operations is kind of the best way that I can define that, and all of his managers. And so at this point in life, he has a few franchises that he owns and operates. He's had a few others over the years, and so he's got several irons in the fire at all times. And we wouldn't have it any other way. Right. We keep doing it over and over again.
So he kind of blends this. He takes his background that starts in gourmet food service through his mom, essentially.
Yeah.
But then he gets his business training, learns about systems and growth, and kind of comes together with the best of both worlds. And
that's exactly
it's enabled him to be so successful.
That's right.
That's
really
cool.
We are serious about our food, Parker. If nothing else.
Well, you can tell by looking at me, I'm serious at eating great food. I don't know anything about making it.
We are with that as well. And these days,
one thing I like about what you said, Casey, was you talk about this influence that your mother-in-law has on your children. Yeah. It must instill in them such confidence that anything's possible. To see someone, not just anybody travel, but as a woman to travel around the world, to start a business in a foreign land, to thrive.
And she's just and raising 5 children. And I
super mom.
A pointed note that we make in our home, at least I do with them, as a woman in the world of business. And that's not to say that everyone is prejudiced against women in business, because that certainly has not been my experience. But I do think it's different when there's a sick child or something, and who's going to take the day off? Typically, is the mom. And
I think it's fair to say it's just a lot harder because you are looked upon
absolutely.
to do a higher role.
And we
parenting.
hold ourselves to different standards.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want more than anything to be there with my children. And so years ago, Miss Juliana commented to me that one of the reasons that she ended up opening the restaurant was because there was a need for income from her side of the family, and she didn't want to have anyone else raising her children for her. So she wanted to find a way that her children could be with her, but that she could produce income. And so what does she do? She opened a restaurant, and so where she's the boss, and there's room for children to be after school, between activities and whatnot. And that really stuck with me for, to this day. Obviously, I still remember it, but it's something that I adopted into my own life as well, because
so isn't that basically what you're doing now? Tell us about your businesses and how you're doing this here in downtown Ponchatoula.
Yeah, so I have a degree in interior design from LSU. And which is a wonderful program, sort of commercially oriented in the design world. And before I had children, back in the day, I did a few different things. I've done other retail sales, and I've done commercial design work, and that requires a good bit of travel. And so when I first had Lauren, my oldest child, who was going to be 13 in February.
Good luck with that, teenagers.
Listen, I know, I can't even believe I'm saying those words, but when I first had her, I sort of realized that what I don't want is to be at someone else's beck and call or obligated to anyone else's schedule. I wanted to be able to make those decisions for myself about what projects I would take on. And certainly, in talking about our wonderful town, I certainly would not call it a nest of great design work. There's not, sort of big booming business here. But
Right.
after some years of kind of being a stay-at-home mom when my oldest two were very young, I decided what I really thought I could manage was design work from home that I had been doing, but I sort of outgrew that. There's kind of a fine line between working from home and having clients constantly, kind of a revolving door in your own home. And so I said, I'm sort of on this line, and I want to have an office somewhere, but I don't necessarily need a true office building. I need sort of a place that I can have meetings. And what I decided at that time, which was about a year after my mom passed away, it was 2015. I said, I really, after a great loss in your life, you kind of tend to do all this self-reflection and what do we want to do? And I happened to be dropping Lauren off at pre-K at St. Joseph one morning, and it was a cold morning, and I can remember I had my coffee mug and the steam was coming up, and I was parked at the red light right at Main Street. And I happened to just sort of look over, and I saw a for lease sign downtown. And I just thought, And so a day or two went by, and I just kept thinking about that for lease sign. And I said, I think I'm going to call. And so
did you talk to Eric about it that night, or did you just sleep on it? And
I kind of just slept on it. I had kind of told him, I think I want to do something coming up. But it was sort of hard to put my finger on it, and I made a call, and maybe I know I went and saw that space, and then I went and saw another space. And over the next couple of months, I said, all right, I'm going to pray that I'm making the right decision for my life and for my family. And so if I get a no, Lord, then you just stop me and I'm going to listen. And what would happen is I would get a yes. Something would just work out very easily, much more than I expected it to, or something would kind of open up in front of me to kind of take the next step in it. And so I decided our downtown really could use kind of some new blood, but I'm going to put my design store downtown. And that's not something you do in a small town super lightly. Opening a business takes a lot of hours. Right. It takes a decent amount of financial investment, although I don't necessarily think that that's the hardest part of the equation. And it really takes, I think, more than anything, a commitment to a period of time that you can allow things to grow, because it's not like opening, golden arches somewhere. You're not going to have instant recognition and a long drive through when you're opening up in a small town. And of course, now I'm saying this with 2020 hindsight too, so remember that. But more than anything, I said, okay, I think I can, at this point in my life, I can give this the amount of time that I think it's going to need to really develop. And here we are 6.5 years later. Still rocking and rolling.
Super successful years later too. I mean, you've done well. Yeah. You've won awards. I mean, you've been voted, I think, 4 times the best interior decorator on the North Shore.
It's a small pool, but I'm happy to be at the top of it. Okay.
You're a big fish in a
medium-sized pond, maybe.
I was gonna say it's a bigger pond than me over here in just little Ponchatoula. You're at least you have a whole district or region. Yeah. But we're real proud of the success you've had, and the store is beautiful. So tell us a little bit about the retail end of things, because clearly you're a talented interior designer. Yeah. And I think, when you say that job description and you talk about studying that at LSU, people probably get it. And if they don't, correct me and clean that up. But on the retail side of things, many of us who drive by probably have no idea all the wonderful goodies in there. So tell us a little bit about your store and what you sell.
So my business is kind of twofold. I do offer full interior design services, but Shallaroo is the name of the storefront. And within the sort of umbrella of Shallaroo, we offer custom framing, which I think everybody kind of knows what that entails, which I just opened.
Folks, if you could see the walls around Casey right now, you would see much of her work, because
it's all right over here. It's fantastic.
She does
but really,
work.
I kind of identified a couple of things, a couple of segments of the market that I felt like weren't being served for me as a designer when I was trying to work with clients. And so there was no place other than sort of a big box store that I could take something to be framed. And Oftentimes in custom design, we have very special things that need to be framed. I've framed, just off the top of my head, I framed original Audubon prints. I framed a cloth D-Day map that was given to someone's father by President Eisenhower before he exited the boat on D-Day, and it was signed by everyone who survived across the beach. And if you think that I would have ever dropped that off at a big box store to be framed, you're absolutely wrong. I would never have entrusted that to somebody who didn't have the kind of gravitas that I really pride ourselves on having as a locally owned business. And so to kind of fill in the gaps between custom framing and our custom window treatments that really are kind of our bread and butter and our full-time work there, we do have a great retail selection. I call us a home decor boutique. We're not a
what do you mean by that?
Store. We don't have your run-of-the-mill everything, but we do have some things. We have some great lamps and light fixtures. As a designer, I have a lot of sources that I use just within projects, and I try to display and represent a little bit of each of those brands, just where it's appropriate. And then over time, I've just grown as a business person and a retail store owner, and kind of learned what was missing in the community. So we also have, believe it or not, I have the best line of stuffed animals that you'll ever find, which is Joey Cat. And I know someone in your life who's a major collector of those,
Right.
And I would not have known those prior to having been in business, but It was definitely a hole that was missing in our area. Just nobody had kind of brought those into our area, and so people were having
to give you an idea how popular your store is. I'll pull up a comment here. Miss Faye Ivaninsky writes, at first, Casey, she says you have such a big heart when you go in the store. And she says you'll be unpacking new items, and she's buying them before you can even get them to the shelf. So,
that does happen. Yes, it really does.
That's the kind of quality we're talking about. But she also talks about how she loves you, and you come from good stock. So speaking of good stock, she's sweet. Right. Your mama was the best. Your dad's a great guy. Wonderful family. I know you make them proud. Another quote here, our old friend Cherie Kinchin Wells says, "Hey, pretty lady, you're the bright light in my life." And to this day, she still misses the strawberry smoothies we were talking about.
I knew she would say that. She is always on me to recreate the smoothies.
You should sell that recipe in your store. Maybe it'd be
maybe we need to do that Strawberry Festival weekend. We'll donate the proceeds.
So we're here with Casey, talking about her store, talking about her interior design services. 6.5 years in, you mentioned 2020 hindsight, right?
Yeah.
Clearly, you've been successful. You've won awards. Financially, you've made it. Mm-hmm. You're doing great. You're still doing a great job as a mom. We see you in the community doing all these things. What are some lessons you've learned? What have been some of the keys to success along this journey as a business owner, a designer, a professional, and a mom?
Well, I'm sure as a business owner yourself, Parker, I'm sure there are too many to list, really, in any amount of time. But one thing I always want people to know and understand about Ponchatoula, or really anywhere that you are, if you are passionate about something and you love something, that Parker, the way you love serving your clients, a way will be made for you. Maybe it will not be the way you would have envisioned it or just written it out, but what I love is helping people love their homes. I think that you and your family, whoever you and your family are, deserve a wonderful place to come home and to minimize the outside stresses of the world. And within the space that you take up in your home, there are ways to brighten your life and make your days easier and your chores easier. And when we approach that purposefully from the interior design perspective, we can often accomplish that very quickly and very minimally. It's not necessarily what you think decorating or interior design is. But from a business perspective, the same can be said about, I want our community to experience nice weekend strolls through downtown. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put something there that provides a nice experience downtown. I don't want our family to have to drive across the lake to just go have a nice lunch and spend the afternoon, kind of strolling through shops. I believe that we can do it here in Ponchatoula. And so it was a purposeful thing for me to have decided to inhabit downtown Ponchatoula as a business.
Yeah.
And I always encourage people who are looking at coming into town to open up, like, absolutely, please do it. Don't do it thinking it's going to be easy and fun, because it will.
Right.
It will. There will be fun parts, and
eventually
it
you'll
won't
get
hard,
there.
But yeah, eventually you will get there. But you have to go in knowing that that it is going to be work, as any business absolutely is. You know, there's no such thing as super easy. And but whatever you think our community needs it. It absolutely does.
Well,
and
I'm so glad to hear you mention that.
Absolutely.
Because we were talking about that last week. You know, we had another downtown retailer on, and the subject of, Tula Berry Sweets came up. Yeah, Renee, your neighbor. So, Trisha Nicholas over there, they're doing something special. It's like
they really are. Absolutely.
Not only can you get these great ice cream treats and cool toys and old school candies you haven't seen since your childhood, but now they've got world-class baked items, Parisian pastries. Thanks to Summer Veach and Candlestick Bakery. And, speaking about taking food seriously, but, now we've just become a better downtown experience. You talk about the stroll, and you can have this kind of eclectic Saturday morning where you dip into your store and find the coolest little stuffed animal you've ever seen, unlike anything you've ever seen, or whatever, and you get a good ice cream, a pastry, go down and buy some art, whatever. But you're right. We just need more talented people.
If you choose to walk from your house,
right.
It really, that's one thing I love about living downtown is I do not, walk to work every day. I'm not quite that green, but on certain weekends we can do it. When I save the parking spot during Strawberry Festival or whatever, we can do that. And I really, I don't believe that our town should be allowed to sort of dry out and blow away. I want us to stay with life downtown and
I think
vibrancy downtown.
You have shown our local folks, and especially our local business owners, that any type of business can thrive here. You mentioned earlier Ponchatoula, how small we were. You're not really viewed as a hub of, design greatness.
Yeah, certainly not.
But you're thriving right here downtown Ponchatoula.
Maybe still not, but that doesn't mean that there isn't room for it,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like if you build it, they will come, a little bit of a field of dreams mentality. Well, I promised we would get you out of here in time to relieve your babysitter.
Yes.
So the time has come to close up. But before we do, I want to offer you an opportunity, Casey, to share any other thoughts you have. Anything else on your mind, your heart, that you want to share with our viewers before we close?
I just would like to say thanks for having me. And I would like to say that throughout the years, our two families knowing each other for such a long time, and our all the other families that we kind of have mentioned, I think our people here in our community are what we have to be the most proud of. Businesses come and go, and our lives change, but so many of us have chosen to be here. And, there are many, many choices of places to live. And I continue to choose Ponchatoula as the place that I want to be and raise my family. And I'm thrilled to be part of a generation that's doing that on purpose. I really am.
Well said. I couldn't put it any better. And your family is really the best example. On one side, these families that have been here for literally 100 years or more. Two brothers that came over generations ago.
Ages ago, yes.
And here your children.
And found this little spot somehow.
His grandmother came over from China not that long ago when we were kids, and have come together to build something beautiful. So you started off this interview talking about Ponchatoula to build, this combo of old people, new people, and it just being special. And that's your family in a nutshell. So thank you for coming and sharing your story, for being with us here today. To our viewers, we'll see you next week. Same time, same place, Ponchatoula Live. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.